Imagine a 19th century map where the dominant power in Southeast Asia is not British or French, but a formidable Siamese empire, its ports in Bangkok and Mergui rivaling Singapore. What if the Kingdom of Ayutthaya had never turned its back on the world? The linchpin of this future lies in a single event, the Siamese Revolution of 1688. Now, let us turn the page of established history and explore what might have been. In the late 17th century, the court of King Narai of Ayutthaya was a nexus of global exchange. Ambassadors from Louis XIV's France walked the palace grounds alongside Persian merchants and Japanese envoys. Narai, a shrewd geopolitical strategist, sought to leverage a French alliance to counterbalance the aggressive expansion of the Dutch East India Company, or VOC. This policy was championed by his influential Greek advisor, Constantine Phaulkon. In our history, as King Narai lay dying in his palace at Lopburi, Petracha launched a swift and successful coup. Phaulkon was executed, the French were besieged and expelled, and Siam turned inward for the next 150 years. They viewed the growing European and specifically French Catholic influence as a threat to Siamese sovereignty and tradition. This xenophobic sentiment coalesced around one man, Petracha, the commander of the Royal Regiment of Elephants. In our history, as King Narai lay dying in his palace at Lopburi, Petracha launched a swift and successful coup. Phaulkon was executed, the French were besieged and expelled, and Siam turned inward for the next 150 years. Our point of divergence is here. In this timeline, the plot is betrayed. A loyalist courtier alerts the French commander, General Defarges, moments before Petracha can seize the palace. Coordinating with the elite royal bodyguards still loyal to Narai, the French garrisons move not to defend, but to attack. Petracha's coup is decisively crushed, its leaders arrested and executed for high treason. King Narai survives, and the foundational policy of his reign engagement with the West is not only preserved, but violently vindicated. With Petracha's xenophobic faction eliminated, the Franco-Siamese alliance transforms from a tentative pact into the bedrock of state policy. This immediately catalyzes a profound military synthesis, creating a hybrid force unlike anything in the region. We are not merely talking about the importation of weapons. This is a fundamental fusion of military philosophy. The French, understanding that their position is now tied to the stability of the Siamese crown, begin a systematic modernization of King Narai's army, focusing on its two greatest weaknesses, fortification and artillery doctrine. Drawing directly from the principles of the era's master engineer, Vauban, French military advisors redesigned the defenses of key strategic locations. The great port of Mergui on the Andaman coast, and the fort at Bangkok, guarding the mouth of the Chao Phraya River, are reconstructed into bastioned Tres Italienne fortresses. These star forts are engineered to withstand prolonged artillery bombardment, rendering obsolete the traditional mass assault tactics employed by regional rivals like the Burmese Toungoo dynasty. Within a generation, Ayutthaya itself is ringed by a network of interlocking fortifications, turning the capital into one of the most defensible cities in all of Asia. Parallel to this, the French establish a Royal Siamese Artillery Corps and a military academy. Here, we see the true depth of the integration. It is not enough to simply purchase European cannons. The French train Siamese officers in the complex mathematics of gunnery, the logistics of supplying a modern siege train, and the combined arms tactics required to protect their valuable artillery in the field. This creates a professional, educated officer corps loyal to the crown, replacing the old system of nobles raising their own retinues. While the traditional core of Siamese power, its vast manpower reserves and formidable war elephant core remains, it is now augmented by a technologically superior force capable of both defensive resilience and offensive siegecraft. When we analyze this military development, we see Ayutthaya adopting the core tenets of the European gunpowder empire model. But crucially, on its own terms and under its own command structure, creating a formidable shield against internal and external threats. This newly forged military power becomes the instrument of a sophisticated grand strategy, centered not on territorial conquest, but on economic hegemony. Ayutthaya's leadership, with King Narai's outward-looking dynasty now secure, understands that true power in the coming centuries will flow not from land armies, but from the control of maritime trade. The kingdom's strategic objective becomes the transformation of Siam into the indispensable commercial hub of the entire Golden Peninsula. The cornerstone of this policy is a two-pronged approach: the modernization of the navy and the masterful diplomatic manipulation of competing European interests. First, we see the development of a Royal Siamese Navy. Under French tutelage, Siamese shipwrights begin to construct European-style vessels, loops, brigs, and eventually frigates, in the shipyards of Mergui and Bangkok. This is not a force intended to challenge the great European navies on the open ocean, but a powerful regional fleet designed for two purposes: to eradicate piracy in the Strait of Malacca and the Andaman Sea, making Siamese-controlled sea lanes the safest in the region, and to project power against local rivals like Burma and Vietnam, ensuring they cannot threaten Siam's commercial dominance. This naval shield guarantees the security of the kingdom's most critical strategic asset, the trans-isthmus trade route. The port of Mergui on the Bay of Bengal and the capital Ayutthaya on the Chao Phraya become the two ends of a secure and efficient portage, a vital artery that bypasses the Dutch-controlled choke point at Malacca. Second, with its military and naval power established, Ayutthaya executes a brilliant strategy of realpolitik. It refuses to grant any single European power a monopoly. Instead, the Siamese court invites the English East India Company, the Dutch VOC, and their French partners to establish limited trading posts, or factories, playing them against one another. When the Dutch become too demanding, lucrative contracts for teak and tin are awarded to the English. When the English push for sovereign privileges, the French are reminded of their special relationship and given preferential treatment. Here, we analyze a state acting not as a potential colony, but as a confident, sovereign power broker. It leverages European mercantilist rivalries to its own advantage, extracting maximum revenue through tariffs and duties while absorbing technology and expertise. This symbiotic, if tense, relationship fuels a boom in the Siamese treasury, funding further military and infrastructural development and cementing the kingdom's role as the region's primary economic gatekeeper. As the 18th century gives way to the 19th, this alternate kingdom of Ayutthaya enters the Age of Imperialism. Not as a potential victim, but as a peer competitor. The wealth accumulated from 2 centuries of uninterrupted global trade has funded more than just military hardware. It has catalyzed a gradual state-directed industrial revolution. Steam-powered ships are built in the royal dockyards, and crucially, railway lines begin to stitch across the Kra Isthmus, transforming the arduous overland portage into a rapid, high-volume land bridge. This Siamese-controlled route becomes an even more vital artery of world trade, a direct challenge to British-controlled Malacca and later Singapore. When the colonial ambitions of Britain and France reach their zenith in the mid-19th century, they do not encounter the historically weakened Siam of our timeline. Instead, they face a centralized, industrialized state with a formidable European-trained army and a modern navy capable of defending its coasts. The geopolitical calculus for conquest is completely altered. To subjugate this Siam would require a full-scale war, a costly and uncertain venture, against a well-armed nation that is also a crucial and integrated partner in global trade networks. As one historian might note in this timeline, Siam was not a fruit ripe for the picking, but a fortress to be reckoned with. Consequently, the scramble for Southeast Asia plays out differently. Ayutthaya, now likely with its capital moved to the more defensible and strategic port of Bangkok, becomes a regional hegemon. It leverages its military and economic power to expand its sphere of influence over Laos and Cambodia, preempting French Indochina. It negotiates with the British over the Malay states not as a fragile buffer, but as a significant power asserting its own interests. Treaties signed with Western powers are those between near equals, focused on trade and demarcation of influence rather than colonial submission. This uncolonized Siam enters the 20th century as a beacon of independent modernization. A powerful and respected kingdom that mastered the game of empires by refusing to become a pawn. The course of history is not a river flowing to an inevitable sea, but a series of streams, each one shaped by the lands it crosses. The survival of King Narai's vision for an outward-looking Siam reveals how a single point of divergence, a failed coup, can alter the geopolitical landscape of an entire continent, demonstrating that the balance between global engagement and sovereign identity is one of the most powerful forces in shaping a nation's destiny. Our timeline sees Ayutthaya maintain its independence by playing European powers against each other. But could this long-term reliance on foreign military advisors have eventually created a new kind of dependency, leading to a different path to subjugation? Share your analysis in the comments below.